1, 2, ready, and...
Hello and welcome to Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. By and for school administrators, this podcast is intended to promote candid discussion and insight about our great profession. My name is Rick Sola, and as Communications Director for the Kansas Principals Association, I am the host, but I am certainly not the feature. Sit back, take a sip, and enjoy. This is Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another edition of Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. I'm here today with Mr. Chris Legleiter of Aubrey Bend Middle School, Blue Valley School District, USD 229. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you for having me, Rick. I'm excited to be a part of this wonderful podcast with principals throughout the state of Kansas.
Awesome to have you on, and really appreciate it. And for those who aren't aware, the position that I currently hold at KPA, Communications Director, is Chris is my predecessor here. When was that exactly, Chris?
Goodness, I want to say like 21, 22 maybe. It's been a few years. Time does go fast, but it's been a few years, yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to have you on and just talk about some things. And as we record this, first of all, it's early in the morning. Got my coffee right here. I don't know what your morning choice is.
Coffee as well.
Yeah. I can't drive past a Quick Trip hardly without veering off and grabbing something. But actually, I go out of my way to go there. But anyway, but you just learned, so it's the Friday before spring break, but you just said for you, this is a professional development day. Kids are already on spring break. It's a Friday, and how'd it go? How'd you get through the week okay?
Yeah, it's been a great week. I mean, I was reminded by a colleague that earlier in the week, it's a full moon, and we know as the weather has warmed up considerably, sometimes, behaviors do have a tendency to increase, but our kids did a great job. Staff did a great job. We finished the third quarter really strong after all those snow days and, kind of interruptions there. We had a great finish to the third quarter.
Yeah, this past week has been so beautiful outside. The exact opposite of the entire third quarter for the most part. I think we actually, students enjoy the time off, the snow days, but I think they really enjoy the routine too, and kind of sinking into a week and getting going. And
I know, yes, students do, but I know staff, I do as well. Like, I think all of us benefit from a consistent routine, and having a snow day, people are able to work around that. But it was the frequency that we had this year that made it even more challenging for schools.
So, Chris, we're just down the road from each other, and we all pretty much had the same snow day impact here, which was several. And I know here in my district, we are adjusting our quarter four schedule a little bit. We're adding 5 minutes to each of the levels, and all of our professional days needed to become student contact days, full days. Blue Valley, what is it? What kind of efforts did you have to do, or at all?
Yeah, I think as a whole, our district had a professional learning day in April that now is a student contact day. So like you mentioned, some of those PD days have been eliminated and we have student contact days. By level, then there were some different things. The high schools have had to, I think, adjust or no longer have some of their late starts for several times to, increase minutes. Our elementaries actually have what they call a collaboration day, like once every month, where it's just staff, no students, which is wonderful for PLC collaboration. But they've had to, I think just one or two of those, they've had to eliminate one of those PLC collaboration days to make them student days. Our middle schools have fairly amount of good minutes, so we have not had as much impact, but all of us had that April professional learning day now become a student day.
Yeah.
And we're hoping no more winter weather. That's the key.
Well, goodness, I hope not. But I mean, we have had some snows at this time of year, and then, I see things posted about, storm that's rolling in today or tonight and bomb cyclone and all this. It's just clickbait, I think. But of course, I'm the one that clicks on it and like, what's a bomb cyclone? We got to check this out.
If you can find out what that is, let me know. I saw that, did not click on it. I was like, I'm steering away from weather.
Yeah. That sounds so ominous. I think it's just basically a storm. I don't know, with some high winds, but yeah, so it goes. But um, Chris, as we get going here, one thing I always like to ask about kind of your road in education, how you got to Aubrey Bend Middle School and everything that led up to it. What is your road to Aubrey Bend?
Yeah, it's been a road that has, twists and turns like anyone's career. I was a high school science teacher for 11 years. Um, and I was in three different school districts, wonderful districts, Washburn Rural High School, back to my hometown of St. Mary's for several years. And then I came to Blue Valley, and I was actually at one of our high schools as a science teacher for several years. Really enjoyed it. I mean, I love teaching in the classroom, and I just felt that pull where I wanted to make a bigger impact beyond my classroom, which led me to administration. And within Blue Valley, I've had the opportunity to be an assistant principal, really, in four different buildings, both high school and middle school. And then I became a principal at Leawood Middle School and had a great opportunity there to help really with the staff make some very positive change. Really value that experience with the staff and the parent community and the students. Like we did some amazing things. And then for me, it's always that drive and pull of how do I continue to get better? What do I need to do to stretch myself, get outside that comfort zone? And Aubrey Bend, is a much larger student enrollment building than I was at Leawood Middle. And I thought that would provide a different opportunity for me to grow as a leader, and it has. It's been a good challenge. The staff and parents and kids are amazing as well. And this is my third year here, so it's been a something where we've tried to continue what's been working, but also add value to things that we feel like we can elevate and make better. And the staff have been amazing, students have been incredible, and our parent support is awesome as well. It's been a great 3 years, but every school year, every administrator will tell you has new challenges. And we always just try to focus on like what can we control? How will we together respond so we keep the focus on what matters most? And every year there's been different challenges, but it's how we work together to navigate through those to still focus on our students. And I'm really supportive of the people we have.
Yeah, you mentioned the growth that has occurred through the course of your career, and just like you said, the twists and turns. And I bet everybody who listens or everybody who sits in the principal chair can describe the twists and turns. And I kind of think of it as just an opportunity to grow in new ways. We get placed. Sometimes uh, opportunities present themselves. Other times, opportunities are given or we pursue or whatever the case may be. But that opportunity for growth is just all around. And then, just like you said, each year presents its new challenges. I had a principal once say, every year it's either the kid year, the parent year, or the staff year. Kind of,
Well, or a combination of all three.
yeah, or a combo of all three. But yeah, certainly no. There's always a challenge, and there's always something. And truly, I think that's part of what makes the job fun. You're constantly having to be on your toes. You're constantly having to think critically. But yeah, it can be a grind, but it can be fun too.
Oh yeah, and I was telling our staff earlier in the year at a professional learning, I was like, every year we will have conflict because when you're dealing with people, students, staff, and parents, there's going to be times there's disagreement or conflict, and so it's not that conflict is a negative thing. It's how we work through it to help people. And that's something in my own like professional journey, like understanding and just as a leader, building leader, administrator, understanding how to work through conflict and don't see it as a negative, but as truly as an opportunity. And it's not always easy. That is for sure. But it's learning how to involve other people so it's a collaborative decision, or to really think about what's in the best interest of our students. What can we do to work through that conflict? Those are things that I've learned over time. It's going to happen. Every building is going to have challenges and conflict every year. It's just a matter of how do we respond to it? How do we focus on what matters most with our buildings? And that's been a opportunity for me for sure.
You mentioned conflict, and it happens. And I would say, I don't know if traditionally, stereotypically, whatever, we're approaching April, we're spring break, we come back. This is the time of year where some of those things that may have been, whether it's tolerated in a classroom, are now reaching boiling points, or the thing that's been a bother. Things just tend to culminate before
Right.
the end of the year. So we come back, and now some of those professional development days, they do act as a nice little buffer sometimes for a little,
They
like,
do.
to break up a month of April, and now
Yeah.
it's a solid, it's a solid run. What kind of messaging? First of all, I love the messaging that you give at the beginning of the year, kind of framing the year as to expect conflict, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But as we come back, you got a PD day today. What are some important messaging you want to get to your staff for the fourth quarter?
Yeah, I think, I think as a building leader, one thing I always strive to do is find ways to continue to motivate our staff. And a lot of times that means like connecting to their hearts, the emotion, their feelings. So whether it's an inspirational story, and sometimes it's not always like the building leaders that have to, do that. It's sometimes involving our staff and letting them share something, and it, or maybe from a student perspective or a parent perspective. So we try to really connect back to our why, the focus on our people, our students. I think that's always essential, but I do find when we have professional learning, and today is our what we call district professional learning. So I won't see our staff today to do that. So I'll have to do some things when we come back and after spring break. But I think always trying to find a way to connect back to your purpose is important. I always think it's important to keep staff informed, about things upcoming, keep them involved in decisions. In other words, I'm a someone who really believes in collaborative decision making. There's very few decisions that are only the principals. I really try to involve our leadership team, our admin team, our teachers, getting their feedback and input because they know best. They're working with directly with the kids more than I am. So I think involving our staff in decisions, but I also think it comes back to, in many cases, helping our staff and reminding myself we've got to focus on what we can control. Just keep focus on what we can control, and we're going to do it together. There's going to be challenges, but we're going to work through it together. That's how, as a school, we're going to be successful, is by doing things together, not in isolation, but doing things together. Good example, we all have unfilled subs, and those are very common challenges. And we can solve that day to day by just understanding how do we do that as a school system. Like together we can fill classes, but we can't have one person being trying to solve it all by themselves. And there's going to be, like you said, things that come up that I'm not aware of, you're not aware of, but it's brought to our seats, and then we have to work through it. And it comes back to really, I think, listening to people, in those moments, really supporting our teachers, but also understanding from the student parent perspective. And over time, I've really learned that you don't solve problems through email. You need to have face-to-face conversation, phone conversation if that's not possible. But you really just have to have those conversations. And like as we come back from break, it's going to help our staff to really have that mindset of not counting down the days we have left in the fourth quarter, but making each day count. I always use the analogy like, this is the last quarter for our eighth graders and we wanted to make it their best. So how do we do that? And so those are just some of those things that I try to really help our staff be mindful of. It is a very challenging job being an educator. But once again, if we can find ways to find gratitude and joy within the work, so we collect back to our purpose, helping each other, helping kids, and then making things together, doing things together, I think are some of the things we really try to emphasize, especially in the fourth quarter.
I love the collaborative approach, and I try to maintain the same thing, and you know, there's maybe a sacrifice of efficiency with certain
True.
collaborative, but I think it does pay off, and you do have to have the conversations. We're a people business, and people are fickle, and just like you said with the email, it can be simple to send an email, but sometimes you're just passing the time off to the future, because it may not get read the right way, or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be.
And
So
it sometimes just an email will make things, at least to five more emails instead of a 5-minute phone call maybe could have helped resolve that. So yeah, it's about understanding what can be done through email, but typically when there's conflict or, just questions, those conversations are needed to happen. And, I was going to just mention a little bit about engagement, what we're talking about with engagement this year. Do you want me to share a little bit about that?
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
one of the things looking back like from 2 years ago to last year and this year, we decided is the engagement in our building, it was fine. It wasn't bad. But I felt like, through research and really talking with our leadership team, the more we get our students involved in classroom learning, and simply that means like how do we help our students become more reflective in their learning and driving their own learning. In other words, being authentic, responsible for their learning, not trying to focus on the grades. I know that's easy for a lot of youngsters, but helping kids understand how do you learn? How do you understand to study for that test, and what type of reflection are you doing about your learning so you're prepared for the next test, how to ask questions, how to respond to peer questions. So we're really in classroom instruction trying to drive engagement through many instructional strategies using a lot of John Hattie's research, visible learning, but it's also going broader. We're trying to involve our students a lot of leadership opportunities in our building, recognizing the great things they do with character in sports and activities, the musical and the plays, creating videos that we send out to our families so they can see the experiences in our day, but also recognizing kids like many schools do. We call it our ABC recipients, basically the character virtues. We try to highlight them on our social media, on the school and our intercom, but then as an admin, we call their parents every Friday. And it takes time because that's 6 phone calls. We do 2 students per grade level, but that takes time. But it's so important, I think, to share with parents positive news coming from an administrator. It makes me feel better, but I also think once again, you're putting a good connection with parents that maybe down the road there could be an issue that you have to circle back and work through with them. But school is about finding ways to elevate kids and help kids find success. So we found that has been very healthy this year. During our staff PD, we've gone actually and said, okay, for the next 30 minutes, everybody, you're going to find, 4 students that you have in class. Think about the kids that are consistently doing the expected behaviors, and they're just doing because that's who they are. Sometimes those are the kids we're not recognizing enough because they're so, I would say they're just going through their motions, but they're always doing the right things. We need to call them. So, when we do that, you're making 300 calls to parents as a building, and that's pretty impactful. So we try to find some ways to elevate students, but this year we've done something to even elevate our parents even more involvement in our school, where we've done actually parent walkthroughs in our classrooms. Um, and we've done coffee with principals. Some building leaders have those meetings where you bring parents in. We've done that before too. And this year we would bring them in and talk about student engagement, but then we'd actually do classroom walkthroughs with our parents. And that has been so positive. Our parents who were able to attend really appreciated just getting into classrooms and seeing teaching and learning what it actually looks like, because it's so different than I think how we went to school, how they went to school. And we involved our 5th grade families, in February when we were doing enrollment, we involved our 5th grade families, and it provided, I think, some understanding of what that experience in middle school is going to look like. So that was something new going back to engagement that we really tried to highlight, was how do we get our students to be more authentically leading? How do we get our parents to have a greater understanding of the work we're doing? And then with our staff, we're really trying to find ways to help them elevate their roles in our building. And simply that, a lot of times that means involving them in decisions, recognizing them, validating their efforts. And like a lot of buildings, we do things like the tireless teacher. Once a week, we highlight a teacher who's going above and beyond, and we recognize them in front of kids and put it on social media. But sometimes it's those handwritten notes, you put in their mailbox or you put it on their desk. I mean, so we're trying to find ways as an administrative team to really increase the engagement in our building. And that's been very uplifting. It's been more of a work on us as administrators, but I think it's helping us work ahead because now our students have a greater ownership. This is their building. Our staff, I think, has more investment in their work because they recognize what they're doing matters. And I think our parents have a greater understanding of what the school day actually looks like. So it's been positive, and I'm hoping that momentum continues in our fourth quarter.
Yeah, those notes, they're seen when you go into a classroom. They don't get thrown away; they get posted, and
Yeah,
it's a reminder when I go into a room and you just happen to see it, not necessarily from me but all the notes from everybody they've ever gotten, and it's kind of cool. And then I'll see like, oh, that was from 2 years ago that I wrote that. The same thing. The social media it's really cool. It's fun to share. People see it, but that handwritten note feels so personal.
So true. Rick, I was in a teacher's classroom just like last week having a conversation, and it was one where we just had to have a real honest conversation, how to help a student, see their perspective as a teacher. And I noticed as they were talking behind them on their bulletin board in their classroom was a note I wrote to them, kind of a private, hey, thank you, showing some gratitude. And it was from my first year here at Aubrey Bend, so the fall of 22. And now it's spring of 25. And I'm thinking, like to your point, it matters to people that they've pinned it up on their board and it's there years later. So a lot of times that authentic praise is what really helps over time keeps people invested and involved.
Yeah. Y Parents, when they walk through your room, what I'm just curious, they walk in and, once they get over the, "Look, oh, I know you," and, all that stuff, what was their feedback and just thoughts with the whole thing?
Yeah, we tried to set it up a little bit like we had teachers kind of opt in, like we said to our staff, because we're working on engagement with our teachers and instruction, like I mentioned. So we talked to our teachers about, hey, we're going to involve our parents in walkthroughs. Who wants to come? Who's open to having parents come in on this day? Certain day and hours. And we probably had, I think, 25 or 28 teachers that said, "I'll do it. They can come on in. I'm not giving a test, and we're not doing like a closed reading, silent reading activity or anything." So the teachers then provided a descriptor, basically a statement about what the teaching and learning would be that day. Whether they're doing like a station rotation, a lab, a simulation. And before we had our parents actually walk through the classrooms, our administrative team did probably a 10-minute presentation at most, a very short one, but it talked about the strategies we use as teachers to help our kids learn and the importance of learning content through skills, skill development. And so then we gave our parents like 2 or 3 things to look for. A good example is we wanted them to understand how much the kids are working with other students, like peer to peer. And so when they had a small handout, the parents, so when we walked in the rooms, we said, if the kids are doing small group conversation, you can ask the students like, hey, talk to me about what you're doing. But if it's more of a teacher facilitation, don't disrupt that. But it was really, I think, impactful. And after we went into each room, and we have 3 administrators in our building. So like I had a group of maybe 10 parents, another administrator had another group of 10, they would come out in the hallway and we would do a debrief for a minute and then we'd go into another classroom. So it helps the parents to recognize like why teachers do what they do and the purpose of those activity for kids. And the parents ask great questions. I mean, it really helped us to understand the importance of making sure like our communication on Friday newsletters, it's really clear, not too much education jargon, but it's so important that parents understand why we do the things we do.
I was gonna ask, what kind of, just kinda logistically, to set this up, you put it out there, kind of front loading for the community,
Yeah.
whatever. What did you have to do
Uh,
beforehand?
yeah, we once again we worked with our teachers about who's open to that day and time. It was about an hour and a half block. Um, give us a brief one statement description of what you're doing. And then separately, we reached out to our parents and kind of described this is what we'd like to do is invite you into our classrooms because we recognize we know our students, but our parents know them the best. But it's that partnership that's going to allow us to really help their child have a great experience. And so we said, here's a Google form, sign up if you're coming in. And once they signed up, then we reached out to them and kind of shared some logistics and then front loaded them on that day with this kind of like instructional strategies to look for, and also a handout to help guide their thinking and their questions. Then after we were all done and we were back in we met in the library with our parents, we had a debrief. What are 3 things you noticed? What's 1 to 2 questions that you have? And that was really helpful too, because the parents, this was probably the most reaffirming thing to me as an administrator is that the parents overwhelmingly said how positive the classroom culture felt. In the hallways, the classrooms, the kids really feel a sense of connection to our teachers. And when parents say that, it's not their own child they're talking about, they're observing it, that felt really supportive, encouraging for us because obviously it all starts with culture. You've got to have a positive learning culture. And that wasn't one of the focal points that we were focusing on with our parents. It was more the instructional learning, but that was one of the things they noticed is how positive just the peer-to-peer interaction, teacher to student, hallways, and that's reaffirming because I know that's what they're sharing with their neighbor down the street.
Yeah.
that it felt pretty good being in the building. It's not the perception of on the movies what they see about schools. And so that was a byproduct that I think we didn't anticipate, but it was very, positive and encouraging. And obviously, we know we still need to continue to get better at connecting with kids. I mean, it's never 100%, and we're going to continue to thrive or strive to get 100% of our kids connected to an adult. But that was really encouraging, I think, too.
Yeah, in many ways, it's maybe not surprising. I think parents they drop off their kids here, and they want their kids to feel good at school. And so when they walk into your building, it does make sense that the first thing they notice is like, "Oh, what a relief! It feels so good in here. I love that." And like, "Oh, okay, what are you learning now?" But they
Yeah,
got to just like you said, the culture is the beginning. Um, they're not going to get if the culture is the exact opposite, and you feel it, and it's just not good. They're not going to care at all about what the first thing. What in the world is going on in this classroom? And they could be teaching about all sorts of amazing things, but you got to get past the feel good or the culture part of it.
correct. And so like here's a different example. I just want to share with you something we've tried to really embrace is that like any school, we have new students sometimes that start in the middle of the year. So we had a new family coming in yesterday. They're going to start after spring break. And we have, we do school tours once they're, for sure coming to our building. And we have our own eighth grade ambassadors. That's what we call them. Students, there's about 65 of them that do different activities within our building. They lead incoming sixth grade events. Web leaders is what some people call them, that some schools have. But these eighth grade ambassadors, we use 2 or 3 for every family tour. They lead the families and the student on the tour. I don't go with them. I let our ambassadors do it. And these are students that, we give them some talking points, areas to go in the building. And, if they're an eighth grader, taking down the eighth grade pod. But like, I don't know for sure what our kids are telling these families, but I always tell the families, you ask them anything you want. Like, I trust our students to know we're here for them. And I trust our kids that they are proud of our school. Now, sometimes they get frustrated with the amount of homework, they're kids. But I trust our kids that they're proud of who we are and what we stand for. So we have our students help tell our story for our new families. And that's been so healthy and positive because the families are hearing it directly from kids, that their own child's going to be the same age. And that's been very helpful. We do that with when we have teacher interviews. We don't go on the tour of the building with the teacher we're interviewing. We have those student ambassadors do it. And once again, the applicants are getting a feel for, is this where I'd like to be directly from our students? And that's been very positive as well.
The tell a story aspect just seems to get more and more critical because um, the story will get told one way or the other, and
That is true.
it's more accessible, and can be more widely spread, and so it is important for there's so many good things going on in our schools, and
There
um
is.
and truly that's part of the reason for this podcast is to hear what's going on in the state. And but yeah, we've got to be proactive with that, and there's a lot of good things there. We have a web program, but I love the depth of what you use your ambassadors to to take parents around, and of course students and so forth when they're new.
Yeah.
But um, you had mentioned you referenced it's not like the movies or whatever. It's funny because I made a note of that, just kind of an aside and just kind of fun. But favorite movie about schools or in a school?
Wow. Yeah, that's there's several. I love Remember the Titans. Now it's more of a sports movie, but it dealt with how school became a focal point of helping a community overcome adversity. So Remember the Titans, but Mr. Holland's Opus is always that's an older movie probably for some, but I enjoy it because the impact of what a single person can have is significant. So those are probably 2 that jump out.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, I almost went with the Mount Rushmore. Like, what would be your Mount Rushmore? It's like, yeah, you can go. It's so varied, and I'll share one that I have. I mean, this is not nearly as profound of a movie at all. So don't be disappointed in my answer here. But one that I've really enjoyed. I enjoyed it because a student shared it with me. He said, my first year teaching, Mr. Sola, you've got to watch this movie. It's 2004. You've got to watch this movie. I'm like, what is it? Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And
a
she gave me the DVD to go home and watch it, and I fell asleep. I thought it was the stupidest movie. Like, what in the world? And for some reason, I gave it another chance. Maybe she told me like, no, you gotta watch it again. And then all of a sudden, it was just like click. I love it. And now I've got kids that are old enough, and we've watched it, and they had the same reaction the first time, like, Dad, this is
Yes.
terrible.
Yeah.
And now we watch it. We've probably seen it 3 times together, and that we just exchange quotes from the movie, you know.
Oh,
But
yeah. Yeah.
it's not
That's
exactly Mr. Holland's opus, but
but it
it's
still is
a
a movie that gives you some good, enjoyment and laughs. So, yeah, it has a good
yeah,
purpose. That's
yeah.
a that's a good one.
Well, hey, real quick, what's on tap for your PD today?
Well, it's, district design, and so, like, all math teachers in Blue Valley will go to a certain location, like a high school. All, social studies teacher will go to a different location. So it's really where our district, like, coordinating teachers will talk about it's more content-based this morning.
Okay. Okay.
So, we don't actually have them here in our building, our staff we do, but it's like, teachers from one content throughout the district. So, we won't see our staff until after spring break, and
Okay.
so, we told them yesterday, as we saw them, like, "We've had a great 3rd quarter, you guys, and when we come back," I've told people, I think April I know it's March when we come back, but April soon. I think April has 60 days in it. I really do, because the month of April for schools, it like you mentioned, there's no days off. It
Yeah.
feels so long, but so that's where we're gonna have to be creative. I know state testing's going on. We're gonna have to be creative with ways to find enjoyment, kind of do things out off the script, to break the mold, to make sure our kids still find value in coming each day. So we're
Yeah.
brainstorming some ideas.
One thing that was kind of lost on me, but how early the Royals home opener is, because we always do a cookout and a kind of a fun. It's March 27th.
Oh,
That's
wow.
that's the week we come back.
That is the week I
And
was thinking
so
April.
yeah, it usually is. So I thought of that last night. Like, oh my gosh, like we usually do some things. Like we got to kind of get that train going a little bit
Coming quick.
because yeah, it's coming real quick. Hey, before we go here, and you did a lot of this already. A lot of great things going on at Aubrey Bend and in Blue Valley with you. But just a chance to brag on Aubrey Bend and the people you work with and the kids you relate with every day.
I just feel fortunate, a great school to be a part of. Our staff is truly amazing. What I mean by that is they really care about kids, but they do value the collaboration, and they wanna get better as educators. They do not like the status quo. They wanna get better. They're willing to learn. They have a growth mindset, but I just appreciate so much how they always put kids first. And if a kid's going through some challenges outside of school, they're willing to adjust for that student, the teaching and learning, the assignments, and they do things to help students navigate through this time of their lives. So I just really appreciate our staff. They're tremendous people. They care about kids, and our students are amazing young leaders. I don't have any concerns about our society in 10 to 20 years. The kids that we have in our buildings, and not just Aubrey Bend, but and throughout Kansas, the young people I've seen and work with, they really have so many valuable skills, and they're making mistakes at times, but they're learning how to become a better person, how to work with people. But their skill set is so high, so much higher than I was when I was their age, for sure. And then our parents, I think our parents are truly they care so much and they value education. For us as building leaders, it's always how do you make the student, staff, and parents, how do you bring them together? How do you find those connections? And I'm just really proud of what we've done as a building in the last few years to get to where we are now. 3/4 the way through the year, basically. This year's had some challenges, but we've found ways to continue to be together and to make things happen for our kids and find great success. And it's not one person, it's a team effort. And that's what I appreciate most.
You just said you have no concern about the future 10 to 20 years from now with our kids, and what a powerful message, because that's pretty much the opposite of what usually gets, I say usually, what seems to be blasted. Sometimes the the loudest message isn't the majority, you know what I'm saying? But to hear that and to come from a building principal, I just love that message because there's so many good things. We just talking about it. So many good things going on in these schools, and these kids, they impress me day in and day out. I can't believe the things that they can do, the talents they have, the leadership qualities that I think back when I was in 7th or 8th grade, I'm like, holy cow, these kids are
For sure. Yes.
leaps and bounds ahead of
Yes.
where I was. And
I guess I would say, I believe in our kids is what I would say. I believe so much in our students, and I believe, like you said, what they're capable of. It amazes me, their skill set and their strengths. They're very resilient young learners for sure.
hey, one thing I'll close out with, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll drop it into the show notes. But I came across this literally this morning, and I forwarded it to myself so I wouldn't forget it because I thought it'd be something good to share with staff. But it goes along really well with what you said. But do you remember Tim Wakefield, baseball pitcher?
Yes.
Knuckleballer.
Yeah.
And he passed away a couple of years ago from brain cancer or something, but he was an amazing knuckleball pitcher. But it's a real long quote. I won't read the whole thing, but his wife posted recently one of his final kind of messages that he had typed out, journal entries or whatever. And he talks about kind of life and you don't get where you are today without the people around you and so forth. But he finishes it with, he says, I've also learned that it doesn't matter how much money you've made, how big your house is, or what kind of car you drive. What matters most is, did you make a difference in someone else's life? And I forwarded that to myself going into April, because sometimes we need that reminder that you are daily having that opportunity to make a difference in someone's life. And at the end here, as Mr. Wakefield talks about it, that's really what's important, and that's what's amazing about our profession, the education profession, is that daily opportunity and especially in middle school, because it's the quirky fork in the road, maybe, I don't know what, but they're figuring a lot of things out. Or they think they have figured things out, then they realize, no, I haven't.
It's a hard time for sure in a young person's life. We use the phrase with our staff a lot about we need to make moments matter. And I remind our staff how, that 30-second conversation you have with a young person in the hallway or in your classroom might be something they remember for the rest of their lives. And so never take for granted the impact that you can have just in a 30-second conversation with just being very sincere and specific with feedback or praise. And our educators do this all the time. And that's where sometimes, like you said, we forget the impact we're making is significant. And we have to find that joy in each day because it's there. We just have to make sure we capitalize upon it.
Yeah. Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking this early morning day and sharing a little bit about you and Aubrey Bend. It sounds like some really great things, and I just want to wish you all the best in the fourth quarter and a nice, smooth end to the school year.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate being on the podcast, and I hope all schools and principals have a tremendous fourth quarter and that we continue to learn together. Thanks so much.
Check the notes section for more information on this episode and to learn more about the KPA and its mission to develop and support all principals through optimized learning, collaborative leadership, networking, and service. Be sure to check back in for our next episode and spread the word about cool coffee with Kansas principals. Catch you next time.